All right,
Yes.
so my name is Yuki Jackson. For those tuning in, I am a poet and educator here representing flan, which is not just the name of a delicious dessert of Spanish origin, as we know, but is also an acronym for the Florida Local Artists and Writers Network, which is basically a grassroots effort to help unite and highlight artists, writers, arts communities throughout the state of Florida. And I'm super excited and I feel very honored to be having this conversation today with Shawana Brooks, who is an award-winning curator, gallerist, community builder, arts advocate, and a poet and writer in her own right as well. I first encountered Shawana's work. I first encountered your work, like I mentioned, when I introduced myself, when I attended an exhibition of hers as her work as the director of Moving the Margins in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was invited by an artist friend of mine named Brittany Weber. Shout out to Brittany. And so, yeah, just I remember while attending the event, I was just so moved, not only with how well it was put together, but for me, what came across the strongest was the spirit and the heart, that was guiding that event. And so that's when I wanted to find out more about what was behind the event. And that's how, I found out about you and the amazing work you do. And so kind of starting off then, if you can share with us, what Moving the Margins is and how it got started.
Yeah. Oh, moving the margins. I'll answer the second question first because it kind of will lead into the first question. So, how did we get started? Basically, I feel like moving the margins was always something that I was doing in my artistic career. And from when I was the curator at the Main Public Library for like 3 years, working for the city of Jacksonville. But more closely, it kind of came to fruition during the pandemic. During the pandemic, my husband and I chose to use our backyard of a rental property we were renting in the Northside community to try to get our neighbors activated to art, but also acted to social dialogue, talking about important things that kind of drive the art, and also helping them to understand like what does an artist do, like what does a curator do. So we basically displayed some of my husband's art in our backyard, and that kind of started from there. We kind of got a big placemaking project to do also in that north side community off 18th and Myrtle. We basically did a 3-part series of murals that were really directed at that community, talking about Black Votes Matter, mentioning the mothers of the movement, women that we thought were prolific and doing activist activities, and also honoring folks who had died from gun violence in that community, but also beyond in Jacksonville, because we felt like so many other communities had, anytime anything happens, boom, the artists are out there creating and doing stuff. And so I was like, why don't our artists have these same opportunities? But also, furthermore, it's important to pay them, not to only let them do this work and put their heart and blood out there just for social change without being able to pay their bills, right? That's an important part, of course, of being an artist. And so many people ask you, like, can you do this or can you do that, for exposure reasons? But I was like, exposure doesn't pay anybody's bills, so how can we do more? And I think between my work at the library and my work in the community, that's what got the Jessie Ball DuPont Center activated to me. I work with Mark Walker, who is the director of the Jessie. The Jessie is like what they like to call it. And so, he basically came to me, was like, hey, we are working with Art Republic to do these murals on the outside of our building, but I really want to, be able to have a place for local creatives inside. So what do you think? And I was like, oh, I think that's amazing. Like, what do you think about what? And he was like, where could we display art or artists? And they had this perfect place downstairs on their first floor, this enclosed glass space that I had seen them use for exhibitions previously, but it wasn't like fully enveloped. And I was like, can we have this space? And he was like, yeah, of course. And I was like, like no need to build specific walls in the place. Let's build movable walls. And so we can let the artists of our community have a chance at installation. So Moving the Margins was really born again from wanting to, of course, pay artists during the pandemic, because the arts and culture sector was suffering hard from so many lost opportunities because people couldn't come together, right? And so I really wanted to, again, make a space for our local creatives to get creative, in a space specific to downtown and placemaking, but also to encourage people to use and utilize their work for advocacy reasons. So that's how we kind of got, the 6-month residency that we created, where we put artists in touch with change makers of our community and to talk about different social justice themes, and then to carry those themes into their exhibition, and showcasing their work for 3 months. So we basically created this immersive, intensive art installation space that brings the community together to talk about these important issues that are important to our city, but important to our culture. And we specifically work with BIPOC artists, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color, if people don't know what BIPOC means, but supporting BIPOC artists in this space, because so many times the opportunities that they get can be difficult. They don't always get a chance to like showcase how they want to show their work or how they want to talk about their work in different institutions or galleries or museums. Can often, kind of turn their work against them as they're trying to be creative. So there's no censorship in our space. We let the work be the work, and we let the artist be the artist. And we're trying to funnel so many different activities and themes around the artist exhibition, but really it is, again, to showcase the artists of our community and a little bit beyond, and challenge people to think of solutions that will carry us into a more progressive city.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I feel like something that's actually quite rare of what you've created, and together with others, but what you've done is that residency element or component to it. I would say specifically in the state of Florida, right?
Yeah.
Just a dire lack of that. And so I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit more about that in terms of what was really, I know you touched on it a little bit already, but what was really kind of important to you when you were constructing that, that you felt like there was a need for?
Yeah, I mean, again, being given this extremely great gift by the Jessie Ball DuPont Center and through the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund, which they basically fund up to 90% of our program. And again, the importance of resourcing artists is one thing that I get a lot. When I was slightly researching different residencies, throughout the US, right? Like I was challenged by that. Normally, again, they just kind of give these artists these space to create, but they don't give them a place to like showcase their work, or they'll give them opportunities to think or process on their work, but still nowhere for them to explicitly exhibit the work. So I started thinking about and also that they don't a lot of times pay them for that opportunity. Sometimes that the artist has to come out of pocket to, pay for the application or pay for this specific residency, or, or they're just like providing like studio space. So I was like, how can this be a bit different, right? I was really challenged to think about one, I want to pay artists to be a part of this because I think their voice is significantly important in why the residency should even exist. I wanted to also kind of get like a resume builder, like you were saying. There are some residencies in Florida, but specifically in Jacksonville, there's maybe only 2 specific ones, and they're both at major museums or institutions. So a lot of times, always our local community doesn't get the greater chance to exhibit in those places. And I wanted to also think about installation. I feel installation itself is a storyteller. And a lot of times people don't understand what how installs are different from walled exhibitions, but that's where you're bringing an artist in to kind of design the space and design how people will interact with that space. And so it can include wall work, or it can be just kind of completely open so that people can just like come into the work and see it. And I really wanted to, again, give our artists a resume builder. So I was like, yes, like who are these working artists and what are they doing? And what social justice themes do their work already have? Like I didn't want to, force them to think of a social justice theme in their work. I wanted to bring that out of their work and show that it was already, predetermined in there, and how people can have a chance to receive that. And again, to really build conversations off of it. So those were some of the things that I really thought were important when building this residency. And then the other component was to be in conversation with the community. A lot of times nonprofits are, really utilizing artists as catalysts for a lot of times their panel discussions or even their galas or lectures that they have. But I wanted to make sure that these artists were properly compensated, because a lot of times people say like, hey, like we'll make space for you. Again, it's that exposure kick, right? And knowing that artists again can't feed their families off of exposure, it was like, how can we pay them to be in dialogue with community, but also then to give of themselves and their work with that community too.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And like I said, I'm just so struck by your heart and your spirit and passion, that's guiding you, to take all this action. And so I'm curious about whether you can attribute or you see the link, maybe an earlier experience you had in your life, like in your childhood or growing up, or, earlier in your years, like, something that you believe, influenced or impacted you to do this kind of passionate, community work that you're doing.
It definitely wasn't like a calling. It wasn't anything that, I thought like when I was a little girl, like I'm going to grow up to be a curator, because again, I don't feel like curators were represented well when I was a child, or, artists, even like, visual artists. Like a lot of times when you're a child, you'll take these field trips to the symphony, or sometimes they'll take you to museums, but they really weren't making the connection between the visual artist and the curator. That kind of came for me later in life. And I will say, like, later in love, it was really through falling in love with my husband, who is a visual artist himself, Roosevelt Watson III, and learning, kind of the curator, honestly, from him, and like what he needed. It was like, going on one of our first dates, he took me to one of his shows, and as I saw all the work that was up in the exhibit, I was like, who all is in this show with you? And he was just like, it's me. And so, like it was difficult for me to tell that because of how he had strategized and shown the work. But he's no curator. Again, they were giving this job to the artists to put up their work. And I was like, where's the person to help you and to build your story? And again, this is how the writing, part of me really got enthused. As you said, I'm a poet and I'm a writer. I like to kind of share my life story as inspiration to get people talking about things, but I also love poetry and I'm a poet. But I saw how writing could be connected to visual artists. Like visual artists are, of course, speaking and showing us with their drawings. And a lot of times that can get lost in translation when they're forced to write about it. And as I was reading like his proposals or reading his artist statements, it was like, oh, let me help you out. Let me write this, not for you, but let me take your words or what you're saying and make them a better communication. So I got like a nickname from our artist friends where they call me a musance, which nuisance and muse put together. They would be like, I'm a nuisance because once I hear like a great idea, I get so like, oh, like you should be doing that. Like, how do we help you do this thing? And then of course a muse, because I sometimes inspire them to do specific projects. So it's a name I take on graciously. And musance was, something I was really again trying to build as I started to talk to more artists in our community besides my husband. And I was realizing like, oh, this is challenges for all of you all. Like they would hate writing their artist statements, they hate writing their bios. I know an artist who says, she says, like, why do I have to write it? I'm drawing it, and so many of them feel that way, but we need the written word for us to understand. And so, I just really felt like writers and visual artists can work together to really hone their talents and to help them with grants that they might need to write. And again, like proposals to other curators or organizations so that they could clearly understand what they're trying to communicate. So it all kind of built from there, like, just really my love for him started my growth into the whole artist community. I have I call them artners, people that I work with specifically, like they're more than partners, they're artners. And one of them is a visual artist named Erin Kendrick. And we talk all the time about art and programming. And, she gets it. She has both of those brains where she can write and she can do the visual art, but so many don't have that strength. And so we're always trying to build together different ways that artists can be promoted better. And showcase their work and work on their websites, and like what things do they need to have as visual artists to be good visual communicators. So I would just say, again, like when I first kind of met her, and I think I was just talking about all the things that I wanted to do for Roosevelt and helping his career. And she was like, you need to do this for everybody. And I was like, well, I can't, like what? I can't do this for everybody. But then it was like, well, why not? Because I saw the gap that was necessary in having someone as this communicator. I always say I'm an interpreter of visual arts, right? So that people could better understand these artists, come to them with projects that they wanted to get done. And you have, like, again, like every other art competency has some kind of manager component to it, right? Singers have that, dancers have that, actors have that, but visual artists, unless they're big time, I was like, well, what about, the mid-level artists? What about the emerging artists? We still need to make, an equal playing field for them. So in the beginning of my career, I really was just like trying to fill in the gaps. I was like, why is this person getting a show? Or why did this person get a mural? Or, like, how do I speak about that person? And I just realized that there's a lot in social capital, especially in the art community.
Oh,
right. And as I more talks to more executive directors of different programs or nonprofits, I was coming to them with solutions. I wasn't trying to bring them more problems. I mean, they got enough problems on their hands. So I was like, how can we build solutions for what you're doing? And in turn, for me to like know more what's on your calendar, know what's coming up for you, know what programs you're interested in. And then how could I speak about especially artists of color and make significant entrances for those artists to play around too.
I love that. And like specifically too, the way that it's so poetic, your process of, cultivating it's a poem. That's what
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? It's like a living poem.
It has stanzas.
Yeah, and how you, have taken your specific and individual love for your, intimate partner, artner,
Yes.
your husband, right? And then you've used that love, specific love, and then to expand for the wider community. It's just, you're to me, such a great example, of how, to use that love, and expanding it to other people. Like, to me, that's the ultimate community building, method. And so within that, you're sharing about your experiences and, what I was imagining too, as you were talking just now, is how much that maternal side, right? To like extend love and care for others and to cultivate them,
Yes.
And so and you speak pretty candidly about your own journey as a mother and with motherhood, which culminated in the exhibition that you had that was inspired and based on your own writings and collaboration with other artists. and it was called Magic, Mirth, and Mortality: Musings on Black Motherhood,
Yes.
which I had the chance to check out online.
Oh,
And
yay, great, great.
yeah, so I highly recommend, anybody watching this to like please check it out. It's still up on the Yellow House,
Yes, it's up on Yellow House's site.
on their site. And so I wanted to ask if you can kind of briefly share how that exhibition came to be and what it consists of.
Yeah, magic, mirth, and mortality. I'll say like my three M's. I'm someone who loves alliteration, right? You can
Ah,
already see the writer in me. Like, if it's
and they're all
a
M's, all M's,
exactly
moving the
all M's.
margin.
Yes. I if anything, I love alliteration. I get like crazy about it. It's like ridiculous. I even do that with my programs, like platform performance, continuing
Oh.
conversation. So it's ridiculous. But yes, that exhibition was born out of my trying to understand myself as a mother. One, I don't think women get enough chances to talk about miscarriages or stillbirths or other issues that are not in like the amazing 40-week pregnancy, right? Like, they don't get enough chances to talk about that hurt. And I wanted to be able to try to explain why I was a little bit cautious about the pregnancy that I had, and how I was dealing with it. I had that was my third pregnancy at the time. I've had 4 more since, which unfortunately did not go the way of the child. And so, always I'm trying to deal with like, who am I as a person? Who am I as a Black woman? How I'm showing space and entering and giving space to others in this world. And there's something about motherhood that turns everything on its axis, and of course wants to make it purely about that child. And as I think a part of it should be, but I don't feel like we should lose ourselves completely in that mother trope. And I wanted to share my fears that, that of course Black women are dying. Black women are currently dying from trying to be mothers, and we're like one of the one of the greatest nations in this world, and healthcare shouldn't be an issue for anybody, but it's an issue for a good percentage of people in this world, not only getting the healthcare that they need, but getting maternal access. And I was dying on the vine. I was like, like who to go to, who to talk to, who to get more information from. As again, even though it was my third pregnancy at the time, I felt I was still just as challenged with the information. And the best thing that I could do when I found out my child was going to have to be born early, he was born 27 weeks and 3 days, I think at the time. He was born a micro preemie. He was like 1 pound and 10 ounces when he was born. I didn't even know they had a word like micro preemies. Was very, scary for him even coming out of it. He's fine now. He's a very rambunctious 4-year-old. But at that time, getting petrified, and all I could think of was, I need to share this, and I need to outwardly share this space, and also fighting for people to give you the benefit of the doubt, to know your own feelings. A lot of times when things like that come up, people they don't know what to say. They don't know what to say. I mean, it's awful for anybody, and they're either trying to find like a space to comfort you or to be there for you, but they're not saying the right words. And sometimes you're angry and you need to be able to process this anger. So in all of those writings, it was basically a cataclysm of emotions. And also my emotions at how I was trying to understand my beginnings of motherhood, but my child was in the NICU, right? So parenting, it's not the same with when you have a child and then like 3 days later you're at the hospital and they give you the baby. I mean, that's crazy too. It's just crazy to me that you have this child and it's just like, here you go. You're like, oh, what to do? What to say? Like, I gotta take this baby home and keep it alive. Like that's like your only job. Like, keep the baby alive, which again, I just think is phenomenally crazy. And so I just wanted to talk about all those things, about my care in the hospital, my understanding as he was in the hospital, the NICU for like 99 days, what that emotionally, like, like turmoil that we went through, and how we needed the understanding of the doctors, of the nurses that we were interacting with every day, who were like shouting medical terms at us at like every moment. And we're not doctors. And, I was on the internet like all the time trying to look up terms and trying to understand them. I mean, you become very quickly, a methodical doctor almost, trying to talk to them back about what care that your child is giving so that you can be on the up and up, and just how I experienced all that. And as I shared, I found other people wanted to share and then talk about, their experiences with motherhood or caregiving, right? Caregiving. And I found that to be so cathartic, as I'm talking about my experience, they're reading their experiences. And I started thinking about like how isolating this time is for parents or caregivers when their child is in the NICU. And so I started to think about how could the hospital be responsive to talking to these women or parents. And also, then my curator brain came on. I was like, I kind of wanted to write a book. At first I was like, maybe I'll make this into a book. But I started thinking about children's books and how images and words go together with children's books. And I was like, people need that too, but in a bigger effort, how could I make an art exhibition around it? So, I got with my another facilitator partner in this work that I do around social justice, Hope McMath. And, I didn't want to curate it myself. So I basically leaned on her to curate the content. And I was like, let's pair my writings up with visual images of caregiving and motherhood. And I didn't want to just use one artist. We were like, what if we use 3 artists? And what if we use 3 different artists, like, a younger artist and an older artist, and, also where they had their relationships with motherhood too. One of them had recently just become a mother herself, and another one had like children older. And so it was great just thinking about their images, photography, visual art, how all those things could come together and kind of marry each other and also mirror these conversations. So how could we pair up certain musings that I had with certain images? And it just kind of, it all came together very organically, but, very beautiful. And I made it again focus specifically on Black women, because as we know, like right now in the state of Florida, Florida gets an F where it comes to prenatal care and, also like, maternal morbidity. So I just thought it was important for us to start with our community first. But even since then, we've been gracious enough to share this exhibition with the St. Augustine community. They wanted the exhibit to travel up there. And we also had the same kind of 3 artists, but I was like, oh, how can we build other artist relationships and give other Black women a chance to showcase their work? So hopefully it will be shown somewhere else soon again. But I love that Yellow House still has a digital process. And even I think on there, right, you can hear me reading them.
Yes. Yeah, I listened to the audio. Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's also to me very important, as a poet and a writer, is to communicate with my voice and how I was feeling. So a lot of great things, like, and then that project was basically, I was awarded some money from the Community Foundation of Northeast Florida. They don't officially award curators, which I thought was a travesty, but that's how I was able to use my writing. And then eventually, like as I was writing that grant, that was when the experience of turning it into exhibition grew. And I was like, ooh, can I change it from like just being a book to being an exhibit? And they were thrilled. So it just gave me the opportunity to, again, make sure those artists were paid equitably for their work. Also me as an artist being paid equitably for my work and my process being a part of it. And, hopefully, again, I want all women to be encouraged to hear this content, but I especially hold space for Black women and what they're going through, and hope that it could create some awareness. Like, I really love that Mayo Clinic at the time got a chance to get a hold of the exhibit, and they talked with their doctors. And so did UF Health, where I had my child. They also, they created a panel discussion for me to talk more about how this, again, is an intimidating process and what they can do to leverage some of those things and to make mothers feel more welcome. So it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and you're tackling, such an important topic in such a beautiful artistic way, which I feel like is needed much more.
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully with the archival, and the data and the archival footage and everything, hopefully.
Yeah, I love, like, again,
Yeah, I
how
love that
share
intersection of all
statistics.
these different
Yes.
mediums.
I think, again, people don't connect the statistics, they connect to
Right,
stories.
right.
So how could we tell a full story while sharing these statistics and making people more aware of, what's going on in our community, and hopefully, again, to be better advocates, for us, and to stand up and say, like, this isn't right. Black women shouldn't be dying at a higher rate of white women just because they're Black.
Right. Yeah. And so do you have, no pressure to, but if you would like to kind of share like a taste of, any of your poetry or writing with us, I'd love to hear it, or, it's up to you.
I didn't have
If
anything.
not, no, if not, it's okay too. Or I wanted to also ask you, as a poet, that are there any poets or writers that you kind of look to for inspiration or who've impacted your work?
I mean, so many, right? And more than that, I always think that I sometimes gravitas to, like, writers that are also something else. And so as I was thinking about this interview and, like, sharing something from, like, another writer, I found a quote by Carl Sagan, who is a scientist, but is also a writer, because of his work and he has to do. And he shared a beautiful quote about, like, what books are. I think words are magical. We manifest from words and from that knowledge of what we speak. And when we write it down, that's the alchemy. I think that's the real, like, like witches brew together is getting those words down on page. So he says, what an astonishing thing a book is. It's a flat object made from a tree with flexible parts on which all are imprinted lots of funny dark squiggles. But one glance at it and you're inside the mind of another person. Maybe somebody dead for thousands of years across the millennia. An author is speaking clearly and silently inside your head directly to you. Writing is perhaps the greatest of human inventions, binding together people who never knew each other, citizens of distant epochs. Books break the shackles of time. A book is proof that humans are capable of working magic.
Wow.
Yeah, I really just love, like, reading that. And so often, again, as I said just a minute ago, words are magic. People don't realize their power in them. But I always say, especially, like, I love manifesting ideas. That is my biggest passion. Like, just seeing something that was in your head and in your mind, and then you take it out and then you write it down and then you share it with someone. And now it's this thing in front of you. Like, it's an incredible get. And, I wish more people were, like, pumped out their own magic that they can supply. But books, writing are powerful tools of connections to each other. So I appreciate this time that you all have taken with me, and to talk about my love of writing, even more my love of arts. But they're not exclusionary. They go together. They're inexplicably bound to one another. The writing and the visual art, I feel like they are both my passions. And when I connect them at best, I'm letting people explore magic inside their own heads.
I love that. And that just sounded like a that just sounded like a positive. Yeah, no, and you're clearly making so much magic, with all the actions that you're taking. So I'm so inspired. And so as we wrap up, I know we have a couple of minutes left. So yeah, just wanted to ask, if you can share, where can people find out more about you and your work and how to support?
Yes, yes. We definitely always need support. Basically you can find me on I won't say all social medias, but we're on Instagram and Facebook under Moving the Margins or Moving the Margins Artists in Residence program. We also have a website that connects you to our previous artists in residence, but also our current artists in residence and talks about the programs that we feature. You can also, find me on social media. I'm a public person. Shawana Brooks. It's easy to find me on Instagram. It's all one word, Shawana Brooks. Or to find me on Facebook. And those are like I always say social media is like my front line of defense. Like, I'm always doing my best to talk more about the artists that we serve and we work with and about their work and to expose them to other platforms and to get their names more out there. But I also try to share about my life. As I always say, I'm a artful girl in a colorful world. About the artistry that I love and going to different exhibits and different shows. I don't just try to just support visual arts, and even our program just doesn't support visual art. We support musicians and performers and literary artists. We try to make a space and again pay an equitable rate to any of those artists. So again, find us on social media, look up our website. Hopefully we'll be rebranding some things in our next third year. We're at the end of our second year currently and going into our third year, and hopefully be a fourth and fifth year and extend it beyond. So I'm there as long as the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund and Center want to be able to support artists as economic drivers in our community and giving them a chance to share their work. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for this chance to talk with. I'm just like even more in awe of you. Just hearing from you, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing and just for being such a powerful force to be reckoned with here in the best way possible, and being such a catalyst for unity and highlighting arts and marginalized communities in Florida. So yeah, thank you so much.